So for today, we are moving on to lesson 4.6, which has to do with congruent triangles as side, 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 and side, angle, side. All right, let's jump into it. All right, guys, so we just now did a lesson on 4.5, which had to do with congruent figures. So basically, what was happening was we were given two figures and there's pieces of it that were congruent to each other. So now what's gonna happen is we're gonna be given triangles, and then there's gonna be certain parts that are gonna be given to us, and then we have to prove that those two triangles are congruent by using some basic postulates here. Okay, so the first one we're gonna look at is called the side, side, side postulate, or known as the SSS, okay? And so what this states is, if all three sides of a triangle are congruent to all three sides of another triangle, then those two triangles are congruent. So if we look at the example over here, it looks like I have triangle JKL and triangle XYZ, okay? And so when we look here, it looks like XY here has one notch on it, JK has one notch on it, LK has two, ZY has two, XZ has three, and JL has three. So remember, the notches match up to each other and tell you that they're congruent. So with that being said, all three sides of this triangle are congruent to all three sides of this triangle. So that means those two triangles would be congruent because of the side, side, side postulate. So then you could use that information if they're giving you other information to swap information between the two, and then you can help to solve problems, okay? So that's the side, side, side postulate. So the next one we're gonna look at is called the side, angle, side postulate. And so the key thing I want you guys to look at here is the way it is listed, okay? So right now we have a side first, an angle second, and a side third. So it has to go in that order, okay? So like if I have a triangle, I'm gonna be doing the side, the angle, and the side. It has to go in that specific order. It has to match up in that specific order, okay? So with that being said, let's look at my definition. So it says, if two sides and the included angle of the triangle. So the word included means the angle that is made by those two sides of the triangle. Of a triangle are congruent to two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then those two triangles are congruent. So basically, if you're given a side, and the angle in between those, and it matches up to the same thing on the other triangle, then that means those two triangles are congruent to each other. So let's go and look at this example. So right now, it looks like PO here has one notch on it, and I guess that's EG has one notch on it. And then these two right here have two notches, these two right here have two notches. And look, the angle that is made up by both of those sides right there, the angle that is made up by both of those sides are all congruent to each other. So that means side, angle, side, side, angle, side. So that matches up. So basically, in that specific order, if those match up, then that means those two triangles are congruent, okay? So we're gonna take these two postulates, side, 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 angle, side, and we're gonna flip it over to the examples and see if we can prove if some triangles are congruent to each other. All right, look at example number one here. So it says, given the triangles below, determine if they are congruent and explain how you know, okay? So right now we can see that this side and this side's congruent, so that's one side. This side and this side's congruent, that's another side. So there's not a third side to be congruent, so I can't do side, side, side. But what I do know is that these two angles right now are vertical angles. So that means this angle right here and this angle right here is congruent to each other. So now look, we have one notch, an angle, and two notches. I have one notch, an angle, and two notches. So that means they match up. So side, angle, side, side, angle, side. So that means these two triangles are congruent because of the side, angle, side postulate. And I could actually write a congruent statement by using these two, okay? So it looks like I have triangle JAD. So triangle JAD is gonna be congruent to, and it looks like here that my two here, so I went JAD here. So it looks like ZAM because Z and A would match up with J and A, and then A and M would match up with A and D, okay? So ZAM. So triangle ZAM, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, then that would mean, since those two are congruent, that would mean everything else would then turn in to be congruent. So this angle right here would be congruent to this one up here, and this angle right here would be congruent to this angle right here. So that would make everything, corresponding parts are going to be congruent. All right, so now let's take a look at example number 2 here. It says, given the triangles below, determine if they are congruent and explain how you would know that, okay? So right now we can go ahead and look. I have 2 angles that are congruent, and I have 2 sides that are congruent. And then if we look right here, it looks like, hold on, sorry. It looks like this third side right here, the one that's being shared, is also congruent. Okay, so that means I have 2 sides and 1 angle here, okay? But remember, I told you that the order is very important, okay? So I have my angle, and I have my side and my side. I have my angle, and I have my side and my side. The angle right here would have to be congruent for it to be side angle side. So right now, there is not a postulate that does a side-side angle, okay? So there's no postulate that proves that is congruent. So that means by the information that is given, that means these 2 triangles are not congruent. They are not congruent, okay? All right, and lastly on example number 3. So it tells me if triangle PON is congruent to triangle SOT, what other information do we need to verify that statement? Okay, so right now they're basically giving us some basic information here, and we need to show what other information do I need to prove that these 2 triangles are congruent. So I learned 2 different postulates. I learned side, 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 and I also learned side, angle, side. So we need to figure out what 2 things I need to make congruent to each other to prove that both of these are congruent by side, 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 and side, angle, side. I'm just going to go ahead and do them both. Okay, so right now, by looking at this, right now I've been given 1 side is congruent, okay? And then I've been given also that these angles right here are going to be congruent as well. So I already have a side and an angle that is congruent to each other. So let's just go ahead and do side, angle, side. So right here I have a side, I have an angle, and then I need this third side over here to be congruent in order to be able to use side, angle, side. So I'm going to go ahead and use a different color here. I'm going to use this color right here and say that NO and TO are going to be congruent to each other. So the other information that I need to use side, angle, side, I need line NO to be congruent to line TO. And whenever that information is given, then that would prove that side, angle, side would make those 2 triangles congruent, okay? So now, what other information do I need in order to prove congruent by side, 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 okay? So again, this angle right here is gonna be congruent. So I already have a side and an angle, but for side, 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 I need all 3 sides to be congruent. So for that to happen, I need NO and OT to be congruent as well. So I need NO and OT to be congruent. And so that's 2 sides. And then I would need the third side, NP and ST to be congruent. So I would need NO to be congruent to TO. And I would need PN to be congruent to ST. So that would be the information I would need to prove side, side, side congruency, okay? So basically, with that being said, this is the information I need for side, side, side. This is the info that would need for side, angle, side, okay? All right, guys, good luck on your skill check.